From explosively contagious diseases and naturally camouflaged parasites to anomalously augmented vehicles, these are some of the most dangerous SCPs that you're not supposed to know about. SCP-081. SCP-081, also known as the spontaneous combustion virus, comes preloaded with some messy side effects. SCP-081 is a mutated version of the redacted virus, with the number of segments in its RNA structure anomalously altered. While the condition is considered to exclusively affect human beings, it is known to be carried passively by rats, allowing it to be spread while not affecting the rodents themselves. Other known methods of transmission include exposure to blood containing SCP-081 or direct contact with an infected individual. SCP-081 works by infecting the body's adipocytes, the fat cells that adipose tissue is composed of, and leukocytes, the white blood cells within the immune system. When a person contracts SCP-081, their cells will begin to absorb nutrients at a vastly accelerated rate. As these nutrients are absorbed, the body's B cells are next to be infected. These white blood cells are responsible for producing antibodies, the proteins that fight infections. When affected by SCP-081, B cells secrete larger than normal quantities of human antibodies. However, analysis conducted on victims by the SCP Foundation have shown that these antibodies aren't the typical kinds that would normally aid in protecting the body. They appear to be altered. This all occurs during the first stage of an SCP-081 infection, and usually doesn't cause major symptoms in those infected. Some subjects might find themselves feeling tired, but there's little to indicate something out of the ordinary. Stage 1 takes place during the first week of infection, which is considered to be an incubation period before the initial symptoms then begin. In the second week of infection, Stage 2 will begin. While the infected victim experiences hot flashes and an increased appetite, their adipocytes begin to expand and multiply rapidly as the subject's caloric intake rises. Stage 3 is characterized by extreme polyphagia. Subjects affected by SCP-081 will experience a continuous and insatiable hunger that will drive them to do anything to obtain something to eat, regardless of whether their body can feasibly digest it. During this stage, a victim's metabolism will be slowed down significantly, along with the sudden rapid increase in weight gain. Despite extensive testing, the SCP Foundation has been unable to determine how long it takes for the fourth and final stage of SCP-081 to occur. It is believed that there is no fixed timeline, only that the victim's body fat percentage must reach 55% for the virus to complete its life cycle with Stage 4. Once a subject has reached the necessary body fat percentage, their urge to continue eating will stop, though many will continue to experience the hot flashes brought on by earlier stages. Shortly after, their body will undergo an extremely violent version of widespread cell lysis, wherein the integrity of their cells is compromised, as the outer membrane of each one rapidly breaks down. While this is happening, SCP-081 uses the modified antibodies produced throughout infection to ignite fatty compounds found throughout the subject's body, effectively weaponizing the infected victim's own immune system against them. When these fatty compounds are ignited, a person suffering from SCP-081 will suddenly start to burn, their body incinerated from the inside out via the wick effect. The additional fat stored in their body becomes a fuel source for the resultant ignition. Thanks to the prior stage being mostly asymptomatic, a subject that has contracted SCP-081 will never know when they are about to abruptly combust. The exact amount of time it takes for this to occur appears to be random. While the exact origins of the disease and the cause of its mutation remain unknown, the first recorded case of a human contracting the spontaneous combustion virus is believed to have occurred in France in 1763. In his book Des incendies caupris humanis spontanis, Jonas Dupont described an incident in Paris where a man on trial for killing his wife was acquitted. The jury agreed that the man's wife had indeed died after spontaneously combusting and was reportedly notably overweight at the time of her death. However, the existence of SCP-081 would not become known to the SCP Foundation until over 180 years later. The death of Mary Reeser in 1951 was found to have been caused by the onset of the spontaneous combustion virus. While the Foundation attempted to keep this information a secret, despite their best efforts, word got out and was leaked to the national media. Pictures of the incident, including the charred remains of Mary Reeser, were widely disseminated. It is believed that most cases of spontaneous human combustion that occur throughout the world are the result of SCP-081 infections. While the Foundation has uncovered that those with diabetes are naturally immune to the spontaneous combustion virus, research personnel are no closer to developing an effective treatment. The virus remains incurable, and while the Foundation works to eradicate it before a full-scale epidemic occurs, they aim to do so without public awareness of SCP-081. While the thought of suddenly imploding thanks to an anomalous virus is disquieting enough, this next entry is arguably even more disturbing, especially if you aren't big on the idea of things living inside your body, which is why the Foundation would rather keep it a secret. SCP-611. Meet SCP-611. Looks like just an ordinary wooden toothpick, right? Well, take a closer look. Kept sealed inside its enclosure and allowed only limited access to food to keep their numbers down, SCP-611 aren't actually toothpicks at all. They're botflies. Specimens kept in containment by the Foundation are only allowed to feed on one piece of rotting meat per week. It's been determined through extensive study of these anomalous insects that the best nutritional results come from giving them beef tongue, aged for roughly 2 weeks at room temperature. Technicians who specialize in working with anomalous insects are tasked with maintaining the SCP-611 enclosure, while wearing full biohazard suits to prevent any potential infestations. Activity among specimens is also reduced by lowering the temperature of the enclosure while personnel are inside. The Foundation first became aware of SCP-611 following a bizarre incident in New Mexico sometime after the year 2000. A group of tourists got in contact with a local dentist, explaining that they'd all been experiencing severe tooth and jaw pain. When the group were being examined, to the unsuspecting dentist's horror, they witnessed something living in the mouths of these tourists. The creatures were a part of a previously undiscovered species of Dermatobia hominis, otherwise referred to as the human botfly, a species that uses human bodies to gestate its larvae. The dentist quickly contacted the Center of Disease Control, who would quickly find themselves out of their depth. This meant that the SCP Foundation had to step in and take control of the situation. The tourist group were quarantined and examined, with Foundation personnel eventually able to extract the anomalous larvae. During interviews with the victims, they gave the name of a restaurant that the group had dined at recently, giving the Foundation a lead to investigate. Looking into the redacted restaurant, it was quickly discovered that the establishment had been unwittingly playing host to an entire infestation of SCP-611 for well over a month. Foundation operatives were able to close the establishment long enough to remove many of the remaining larvae, administering Class A amnestics to all restaurant staff and infected patrons. There were numerous cases throughout the nearby area of victims that had been infected with SCP-611 larvae. While most were safely neutralized, subsequent infections are believed to have caused several civilian casualties, details the Foundation was careful to conceal in order to prevent widespread panic. The most unique quality of SCP-611 isn't just that they parasitized humans, but their anomalous camouflage methods that allow them to avoid easy detection. All instances of SCP-611 appear to be common wooden toothpicks and will normally attempt to land near supplies of these ordinary everyday objects. Once it discovers a supply of non-anomalous toothpicks, an instance of SCP-611 will shed its wings and become indistinguishable from a regular toothpick, entering into a passive dormant state. SCP-611 can remain in this condition for up to 40 days before its short lifespan will come to an end. However, if used by an unsuspecting human under the assumption that they are handling an ordinary toothpick, SCP-611 will be able to propagate its species. It achieves this by laying eggs in a person's gums upon use. A human host will not notice any signs of invasion by parasitic larvae until at least 4 days after exposure, though sometimes up to a week later. This is typically the duration of time it takes for the eggs laid inside the mouth to hatch, at which point the emergent larva will burrow into the subject's jaw. The severe discomfort that this causes can escalate to sharp, continuous pain when left untreated. This poses a significant risk to the human host by creating open wounds in the gums and jaw that can lead to serious infection. Once the newly born SCP-611 larvae have eaten their way through enough matter, burrowing deeper into the jaws of their hosts, they will enter a pupae stage, a characteristic not observed in other species of botfly. The body of each instance of SCP-611 will lengthen, solidifying to resemble a thin, pointed stick of wood. At this point, the fully matured SCP-611 will have no further use for its host and will exit their body. It achieves this by punching directly through the human's host's skin. The results of this departure are every bit as painful as they sound. The primary adult stage of SCP-611's life cycle only lasts approximately 72 hours, during which time they will take to the air in search of more of their kind in order to mate. The species are considered hermaphroditic, with no discernible distance between male and female instances of SCP-611. This is another characteristic of the unusual species considered to be highly atypical among other insects. It has fueled speculation among Foundation researchers that SCP-611 might not be a naturally occurring phenomenon at all. Instead, it may have been intentionally genetically engineered through anomalous means to spread and multiply as much as possible, while also causing as much potential damage to human hosts. Another detail supporting this theory is the appearance of SCP-611. Their camouflage makes them indistinguishable from toothpicks, an item widely used by humans for the past few centuries. Some within the Foundation believe such a precise adaptation could not have evolved in so short a time. Further testing is underway, and it remains uncertain whether these parasitic toothpicks are the product of accelerated natural evolution or the result of anomalous interference by an unknown party. At any rate, the Foundation is determined that specimens of SCP-611 remain securely contained. Should any be found using civilians as hosts in the future, the Foundation will deploy their usual protocols to avoid word about these anomalous flies spreading to the public. SCP-8034. Kept secured in a steel shipping container at Site-322, SCP-8034 is an anomalous 1983 Mitsubishi Chariot compact minivan. The vehicle is operated by an artificial general intelligence bot, referred to by the designation of SCP-8034-1. The bot's primary method of communication is through text displayed on a CRT monitor, which has been installed in the radio slot of the minivan's dashboard. Mounted directly adjacent to the monitor is the lower half of a flip phone, thought to be an old Motorola Razr, which functions as the keyboard for users to interact with SCP-8034-1. SCP-8034's default resting area, prior to containment, was believed to be an extratemporal franchise of the Dave & Buster's arcade outlets. The minivan has demonstrated anomalous relocation abilities, teleporting whenever it becomes aware of an individual nearing death. Typically within a week of the target's demise, SCP-8034 manifests 3 to 5 miles from their location and begins driving directly toward them. The precise trigger for the anomalous vehicle remains unknown. However, Foundation reports suggest a common factor among all observed cases. Not only were the victims nearing death, but each had also requested transportation through an unidentified ride-sharing application shortly before encountering SCP-8034. Once the targeted individual has entered the vehicle, communication between them and SCP-8034-1 will begin. The onboard artificial intelligence will open with a specific line of questioning, offering to kill the occupant instantaneously. The occupant will be prompted to tap the answer button on the Motorola Razr keypad to respond with yes. Should they refuse, the text on SCP-8034's CRT monitor will prompt them to press hang up. One of two outcomes will occur in this scenario. The first being the occupant inside SCP-8034 presses the answer button, and they will immediately disappear from all known baseline reality. Despite the best efforts of the SCP Foundation, it is unknown where occupants who choose this option go. Attempts by the Foundation to track the individuals have all failed. The second outcome occurs when an occupant refuses. Upon pressing the hang up button, they will be safely teleported outside the confines of the vehicle. SCP-8034 will depart from the area, returning to its prior location. The occupant will typically die within a week of contact with the vehicle. Currently, nobody is known to have survived longer than a week following a refusal to allow SCP-8034 to kill them. The SCP Foundation deployed a specialized research team, including mechanics who specialize in anomalous vehicle modification, to closely examine the inner workings of SCP-8034. Searching inside the modified van yielded a few limited findings. There appeared to be a number of discarded Pabst Blue Ribbon brand beer bottles contained in the minivan's rear cabin. though the exact amount of them seemed to shift through anomalous means. Both of the vehicle's headlights and its onboard CRT monitor were all able to continue functioning, even when the engine wasn't running. There were also no batteries for the monitor, or even one for SCP-8034 itself present anywhere inside the vehicle. When the glove compartment was opened, the examination team was shocked to find that SCP-8034 contained organic material. Inside were tissues and bones resembling the anatomy of a human mouth in both size and shape, earning the anomaly the somewhat uninspired nickname, "a tongue in the glove box." Research into the exact purpose of the tissue found inside SCP-8034 is still ongoing. The leading theory among researchers is that this internal mouth is used whenever the vehicle kills its occupant, preventing any trace of them or their remains ever being recovered. However, on closer inspection, it appears that SCP-8034's mouth lacked any vocal cords or esophagus, and the tissue appeared to be in continuous reputative movement. Recent Ivy League graduate researcher Helen Nyquist was assigned to interview SCP-8034-1 by head researcher Montague of Site-322. After opening the vehicle without entering and asking if it could hear her, the onboard artificial intelligence responded by displaying HIC on its monitor between two asterisks, assuming this was the bot's name. Researcher Nyquist referred to it as such, only for SCP-8034-1 to identify itself as terminal. This was misconstrued by researcher Nyquist, who thought HIC was referring to being in an airport terminal, taking this to be evidence that the AI had both poor sentence structure and limited global positioning capabilities. SCP-8034-1 responded by correcting the researcher, then going to add on multiple expletives that have been redacted from the interview transcript. Researcher Nyquist questioned the artificial intelligence about the whereabouts of the individuals who pressed the answer button. SCP-8034-1 responded by stating it didn't know. It explained that when the occupants inside it disappeared, the vehicle was returned to the Dave & Buster's location. According to its claims, its default resting place was on a raffle stage next to a sign inviting patrons to come and win the Anomalous minivan. The bot also described a perpetual droning hiss coming from a game next to the stage called Blow Me to Find Out. While researcher Nyquist initially assumed the AI was being insulting, it insisted that the game involved a giant praying mantis ear, though it was unaware of the win conditions of the game. Later, when asked why there was a mouth in its glove compartment, SCP-8034-1 responded with confusion. The AI seemed unaware of these organic components within the vehicle. Researcher Nyquist was able to forward her findings from taking a closer look at SCP-8034 to head researcher Montague, who examined the mouth's continuous movements. They were able to determine that it was mouthing the words, "Kiss me." The purpose of this remains unknown. Conducting experiments involving Hume counters and D-class test subjects, researcher Nyquist was able to discover that SCP-8034 was unaffected by Scranton reality anchors. It also became apparent that the vehicle could not terminate an occupant unless their death was already imminent. This led Nyquist to theorize that the anomalously modified minivan can perceive a brief, though indeterminate, span of the future. Placing a randomly selected member of D-Class inside the vehicle, nothing appeared on the CRT monitor. When pressing the answer button on the Motorola keypad, nothing happened. Even asking SCP-8034-1 if it was willing to kill its occupant yielded nothing but a mass of garbled text appearing on screen. Or rather, nothing happened right away. An incident took place 8 days later, wherein the D-Class that had been deployed during testing, D-4273, was involved in an altercation with multiple Foundation guards, refusing to return to testing and possibly even attacking one of the guards sent for him. D-4273 was killed. It's unclear if SCP-8034 had a role in causing this. The following test, intended to determine the location of SCP-8034's occupants after they pressed answer, saw D-4273's cellmate, D-3012, placed inside the anomalous vehicle. He was urged at gunpoint to agree to the AI's request to instantaneously and painlessly kill him. In order to get the vehicle's anomalous functionality to work, both researcher Nyquist and Mobile Task Force agent Prion wrote and signed a document stating that D-3012 was to be summarily executed, meaning his death had now been predetermined. Upon pressing the answer button inside SCP-8034, D3012 immediately disappeared. All Foundation equipment he had been supplied with in order to determine his GPS coordinates also disappeared, but ceased transmission from the moment the D-Class subject pressed the button. His location remains unknown, and he is presumed dead. Experimentation continued to such a considerable degree that the Foundation's Ethics Committee had to issue a formal reminder to Site-322 staff for researcher Nyquist's frivolous use of D-Class personnel. D-Class were still a limited resource, and the researcher had sent 47 of them to an unknown location, possibly killing them while trying to understand SCP-8034. In desperation, still no closer to answers, researcher Nyquist entered the anomalously modified vehicle's containment chamber, urging it to explain why it had a tongue in its glove box. The AI noticed it was a strange time to ask this question, and the researcher, defeated, replied that she just wanted an answer to any question. Terminal responded that what the mouth was doing in the glove compartment was a better question. The vehicle didn't eat, drink, taste, or speak using it. It didn't even know it was there until Nyquist pointed it out. She would never get the answers she was after. Researcher Nyquist was removed from approved personnel soon after by Site-322 head researcher Montague. You see, there's a reason some anomalies are kept secret by the Foundation. Sure, some are highly dangerous diseases and parasites that can cause humans a great deal of harm. But others, well, there's still plenty in containment that even the Foundation can barely understand. Now check out terrifying SCPs that were supposed to be left alone, and SCP files that have traumatized researchers to this day for more.